So you guys might have gone through the agenda, but again, let me tell you about the agenda. So today we are gonna talk about pen testing, basics of the pen testing, overview of the pen testing methodologies, ethical hacking versus pen testing, how they are different, industry standard frameworks, OSSTMM, PTES, NIST SP 800, 115, right? Then we'll be talking about the essential tools and techniques that you should know when we talk about the pen testing, right? So the tools and techniques like Metasploit, right? Then others as well, Nmap, Wireshark, these are also there. Then exploiting the vulnerabilities. We'll see how you exploit the vulnerability in any service, right? And then privilege escalation and later movement. So we'll be talking about the privilege escalation, how attackers they do privilege escalation, how they do the attacks, right? And then we'll be moving on towards simulating pen test, analyzing past cyber attacks and lesson learned. So we'll be picking up a real world case study and we'll see how what we have learned from it. And then red teaming versus blue teaming strategies. So this is the agenda for us today. So let's get started. Now the very first thing, what is penetration testing? Now when we talk about penetration testing, we all have heard this word a lot. Now, if you want to define penetration testing, what it is. So basically, whenever we are talking about penetration testing, right? Penetration testing, or you, in short, you call it pen test. This is a way by which you can simulate a cyber attack and find the exploitable vulnerabilities inside the system, right? So that penetration testing is used to identify vulnerabilities in a system, network, or application by simulating real world attacks. Now, the goal for the pen test is to identify or uncover security weaknesses before attackers can exploit them, right? So I might have said, you might have noticed that I use the word attacker, not hacker. Is there any difference between the words hacker and attacker? Okay. Now, when we are talking about hacker and attacker, see, back in the old days in 1950s, right? Hacker was a word which was given to a person who was having sound knowledge related to computers, networks, and system administration, basically, right? That person was called hacker. A person who uses his or her skills to take unauthorized access, steal the data, or perform malicious tasks, that person was called attacker, right? So that's the difference between hacker and attacker. Hacker, a person who is a reputed person having good amount of knowledge related to computers and system administration. Attacker, a person who performs malicious tasks or who does bad things for stealing the data or doing hacking for his or her own good, right? That person is called attacker, right? So when we are talking about pen testing or penetration testing, right? So let's say, what is penetration testing? Let's say there is a login page, right? So you log into Facebook, you log into different websites. So if there is a login page, you are trying to bypass login authentication, right? You are doing password based attacks. Let's say you are trying different types of usernames and password combination. You have a list of username and password. You are trying all the username and password combination to bypass the login, right? To find out the correct username and password, right? Then if the data is traveling in the network, you are trying to find out the information about the weak encryption. So the encryption algorithm, what is encryption, why it is used? So many of you guys, I think maximum if you have been in the previous webinars of mine, so you might know about these things. The encryption. So when we are talking about The encryption means changing your data into a format which is unreadable or gibberish. Now, why we do that? We convert our data into other formats so that if anyone else, if any attacker, if any person is intercepting the traffic, sniffing the traffic, so that person is able to intercept the data, but that person should not be able to read the data or get to know the data, that what data I'm sending to someone else, right? So that is what, that is encryption. So for in penetration testing, we look for these weak encryption algorithms, right? So if the user or the device has implemented encryption, so if the encryption algorithm is weak, I'll be able to crack that algorithm or crack that encryption and decrypt it easily, right? So that's what we do in penetration testing. Now, when we are talking about penetration testing, so we have three strategies of penetration testing: white box, black box, and gray box. White box penetration testing means 100% known environment, right? So what we are doing, we are giving the information about the environment, the pen testing environment basically, to the pen testers, that let's say my web application is written in PHP, it is hosted on Apache server, and then the username and password, the admin username and password I will be providing. Then if you need, I can give you a username and password for a normal user as well. So guest user username and password I'm also giving, the source code I'm also providing. Now test where the vulnerability is. You can test the source code also, you can test everything, but just let me know if there is any vulnerability in my network, right, in my application, everywhere. That is white box. Then we have black box. Black box means 0% known. 0% known means that you don't know anything about the environment. I'm just saying that there is we have an organization, InfosecTrain, right? You have to test InfosecTrain and find out the vulnerabilities. So you have to act as an attacker, right? That is what, that is black box pen testing. So there you have to go through the internet, you have to find out the vulnerabilities by yourself, and then you have to look for the reasons by which you can get inside the network or application and you can take the access, you can steal the data or whatever you can do, but you have to find out a way to get in, right? That's black box. Then we have gray box. Now gray box is partially known. So partially known environment means that I'm not giving you 100% information, but I'm telling you that there is my website is like made on PHP, developed on PHP. It is hosted on Apache, and I'm giving you the access to my network also. So whatever your IP is, I'm whitelisting your IP address in my network so that you can connect to my network. Now find out the vulnerabilities. That is what? That is gray box pen testing. Now these are the strategies of pen testing. So the organization for whom you are doing pen testing, they will tell you what kind of pen testing they want, and then they will give you the information according to the strategy they have opted for. Next, we have difference between ethical hacking and pen testing. So many of the times we have thought that ethical hacking and pen testing, they both are the same things, right? But when we talk about penetration testing, it is a structured security assessment that identifies vulnerability in the system. Ethical hacking is a broader practice of hacking legally to improve the security, right? Then if we talk about scope, so pentesters work within a defined scope. Ethical hackers use multiple attack vectors. So penetration testing, it focuses on specific systems, applications, or networks. Ethical hacking, it covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including social engineering, right? Then engagement. So pen testing is the one time and time bound. So ethical hacking is ongoing and more comprehensive. Then pen testing, it follows a predefined methodology with controlled manner, right? And cleared boundaries. Ethical hacking, it uses various hacking techniques to simulate real world attacks. Then the skill set, if we talk about, so the pen testers need domain specific expertise. So let's say I'm good with web application pen testing, you are good with network pen testing, someone else is good with mobile application pen testing. So it depends, right? Domain specific expertise. Ethical hackers, they require broad knowledge, right? That you should know about web application also, mobile application also, network also, because first you have to hack into the network. But then if you once you have hacked into the network, then you have to move laterally from one device to another, and then you will be reaching the web application server where you will be doing web application based attacks. So you should be aware about these things. So that is the difference between pen testing and ethical hacking. Next thing that we have is penetration testing methodology and standards. So why do you need a methodology? First thing, so basically, if you start doing pen testing without any methodology, so you will not be aware about what's happening, what things we have already done, what things to do next. So there should be a structure that first thing what you will do, then you will move to the second thing, the third thing. So it will help you in performing and maintaining the steps that whatever you have performed, right? That's why you need a structured approach. Now, there are different pen testing methodologies. The very first one we have is OWASP. Now, OWASP stands for Open Web Application Security Project. So, you might have seen OWASP Top 10. That is, it releases a list of top 10 vulnerabilities or attacks done by the attackers, right? But it also gives you pen testing methodology, that how to properly perform a pen test in a structured way, right? So when we talk about OS pen testing phases, right? So it uh, has like seven stages, seven phases, right? Now the first phase is pre-engagement. Now pre-engagement phase, here you will define the scope. Scope means that what things you can test, what things you cannot test in an organization, right? So the organization will tell you, if an organization is hosting a pen testing, you have to do the pen testing, so they will give you the scope as well. See, these are the things that you can test in our organization, but there are some of the things which you cannot test. So there is a boundary for you. Inside that boundary you have to perform the test, you don't have to cross the boundary, right? So there you will get the scope, the objectives of the pen test. Then intelligence gathering. Intelligence gathering means that you are gathering the information, collect information about the target system, domain names, IP addresses, the technologies they are using, right? So with this, what you get to know, so let's say there is a web application and I'm gathering information about it. So I got to know the web application has a blog page as well, and their blogs are hosted on WordPress. Now they are using a plugin of WordPress, let's say Cute News, right? Now Cute News is a plugin of WordPress which basically is vulnerable to remote code execution, right? You can perform the attack, you can take the access of the system. So by gathering this much information, I got to know they are using Qt News. So Qt News, I know it is vulnerable, so I will exploit the vulnerability. So that's why gathering of information is very important when we are talking about exploitation or pen testing. Then once you have gathered the information, then you will do threat modeling. Now, threat modeling basically does what? It identifies potential threats and attack vectors based on the gathered intelligence. That what can be the threats to this organization. Now, what threats can be to the organization? How to find that out? So basically, threat modeling finds out the attack vectors. Attack vectors means the path or all the points where an attacker can attack, right? So basically, attacker can attack in multiple places. So let's say you have port number 80 open, attacker can attack there. 443 open, attacker can try there. 22 open, attacker can try there, right? So these are ports. Then there are in web application on HTTP, we are doing the attack, so we can perform the attack on HTTP. Then there is a network as well, so network based attacks we can also do, right? That is what? That is the attack vector, the path the attacker can take to reach your to get the access of your system. So in threat modeling, we find out all the threats to the organization and we plan about how organization can be exploited, like of the vulnerability in the organization. Then you do VA, vulnerability analysis. So you will scan for security weaknesses using automated tools or manual tools, right? So you will use those tools to find out the vulnerabilities, and when a vulnerability is found, then you will do exploitation, right? So you will the vulnerabilities which you have found during the vulnerability analysis, now you will exploit those vulnerabilities to assess their impact, that after exploiting the vulnerability, how much business impact it is doing. If an attacker finds out the vulnerability, exploits this vulnerability, how much the business will lose, right? So exploit, that's why exploitation is done, right? Then post exploitation. Now post exploitation means you will analyze the consequences of successful exploitation and you will determine further attack possibilities, right? How the attack can happen further, what things can happen if an attacker finds out this vulnerability, how much deep inside the network or web application the attacker can go. And then once you have done that, everything which you have found, including the remediation, you will put that in report and you will write the report and submit the report to the organization, right? Whatever findings you have, right? So you will document all the findings and you will submit it. Yes. Now same like that, what we have PTES. PTES stands for penetration testing execution standard. So it is a framework that defines the best practices for conducting pen test. Now, all these 7 steps that we have discussed for the OS, all these 7 steps are same in the PTES also. PTES also gives the same 7 steps, right? Now, when we talk about PTES guidelines, right? So it gives you technical implementation that use the tools like Nmap, Metasploit, Burp suite for different phases, right? Then documentation requirements, it will tell you that include test objectives, discovered vulnerabilities, exploitation attempts, risk ratings, right? Then legal compliance, make sure proper permission documentation is there and you are adhering to data handling regulations. You are not violating any of the regulations for that organization or for the compliances basically, right? And then quality assurance. So it involves peer review, validation of exploits, elimination of false positives. So these types of information are given by PTES. Next we have from NIST. Now NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology, right? Now NIST gives S SP 800 115, right? This is the publication number. So NIST is a 800 is a technical guide to information security testing and assessment. So it provides the organizations with a structured approach to conducting security assessment, finding out vulnerabilities, and mitigating the risk, right? So it gives you security testing techniques like pen testing, vulnerability assessment, the methodology, risk analysis. So in the phases, number of phases in NIST, they are four only, right? The first phase is planning. In planning, you will define the objectives, the scope of the pen test. Then happens discovery. Now, discovery means gather the intelligence or information on the target system, right? Once you have gathered the information, then arrives the attack phase. Attack phase means you will simulate the real world attacks to identify and exploit the weaknesses, and then reporting. So document all the findings and suggest mitigation strategies, right? So these are the things that are there in NIST. Cyber kill chain is basically a way by which the organization finds out that how the attackers they do the attack. So first they will start with the information gathering, then after gathering the information they will do the weaponization, right? So in weaponization they find out the weapon to use, the exploit to use, or then delivery they will check that how to deliver the code. So whether to deliver through phishing or deliver through let's say USB or different ways, right? How to send that malicious code to the target machine. Once the code is sent, then exploitation arrives. So they will basically do the exploitation. The malicious code will exploit the vulnerability. Once the vulnerability is exploited, you have the excess of the system. And when you have this excess of the system, then you will do installation. Installation means installation of different backdoors, right? So once the vulnerability you have exploited, maybe that vulnerability will be patched. Yes. So if the vulnerability is patched, even then you should have a way by which you can get inside the organization, a second way. So that's why you install different backdoors so that you can take the access. Then CNC, or you call it C2, command and control. So command and control frameworks like Empire framework or uh, Posh C2, these types of different tools are used. Cobalt Strike is also there. These tools are used to uh, basically create a bidirectional channel between the victim machine and the attacking machine so that we can upload and download the data from that machine. And then the last one is action on objectives. So action on objectives means the attacker works to achieve the objective of the intrusion, which can include exfiltration, destruction of data, or intrusion of another target, right? So what the reason by because of which you have done for the organization that you're doing. So it is meant to attack for to the organization organization from the perspective of the attackers so that you can know where you are lacking and how the attacker can perpetrate into your network, right? So by this you can understand how what are the techniques attackers use and how they act. Perfect. Then we have ISSAF, Information System Security Assessment Framework. So this is a penetration testing methodology which is supported by OISSG group, which is Open Information System Security Group. So it is no longer actively maintained, but it provides a structured approach, right? So in that structured approach, the first step that you have is planning and preparation. Now, planning and preparation means establish the communication channels, define the scope, sign formal agreements before the testing begins. Then, second step is assessment, right? This is the core testing frameworks. Inside assessment, you will do information gathering. Use technical and non-technical methods to collect relevant data about the target. Then, next, network mapping. Network mapping means identify all systems and resources within the target network, right? Then we have vulnerability identification. Now, vulnerability identification means detect the security weaknesses in the target systems, right? Once you have detected the vulnerability, then you have penetration. So penetration means attempt to bypass security measures and gain unauthorized access. Then privilege escalation. So obtain administrator level privileges on the target system. And then you will do further enumeration. Enumeration means finding out more information. So once you are inside the system, you have high level privileges. So you will find out more information inside the system. After gathering more information, you will move towards the high level targets like servers and all. You will look for that, right? And then in the end, reporting. So you will create a report, document the findings, provide the recommendation for the remediation of the vulnerabilities, and make sure no traces of the testing remains. So you will clean up the system, right? That is your ISSAF. Then we have OSSTMM. Now OSSTMM, it is basically open source security testing methodology manuals, right? Now this is a scientific framework for conducting the security assessment, and it provides a structured approach to evaluating operational security through measurable and repeatable testing. Right. Now in OSSTMM, we have test phases. Right. Those test phases are regulatory compliance. Right. Regulatory compliance means it makes sure you are adhering to the laws and industry standards. Right. Then posture assessment. Now, in posture assessment, you will evaluate security controls and the policies. Then, trust verification. Trust verification means you will test access controls and authentication mechanisms. Then, controls mechanism or validation. Now, if the effectiveness of the security measures is appropriate or not, the security controls that you have implemented, if that is proper or not. So that will be found where you will test in control validation. And then we have process verification. Now process verification means it reviews security processes and procedures, right? So it provides you consistent, measurable results. It creates repeatable testing processes, generates the metrics for security posture, and it helps to prioritize security improvements, right? So these are the methodologies that are used for penetration testing. Next, we have when we talk about pen testing execution standard. So we have already discussed these phases. First, pre-engagement phase, where we talk about the scope and the objectives of the pen test. Then intelligence gathering, where you will be gathering the information about the target organization, be it domains, be it the IP addresses up and running in the network. And then threat modeling. So threat modeling is used to find out the threats and the attack vector, the threats which can affect the organization. Now, if I'm talking about threats, what are threats? How will you define it? Anyone? So what we have something called asset, right? Asset is anything that holds some value for you. Nowadays, data is your asset. Data is the new oil, right? And when we talk about asset can be a server which is holding your data, or any server which is hosting your web application, right? So threat is anything which can lower the value of your asset. So let's say if we talk about a vulnerability, right? Attacker exploiting a vulnerability. So attacker is the threat for your organization, right? That is your asset. That's how you define asset. Yes. So in threat modeling, you will be checking what all assets are there and how these assets can be exploited, right? How they, what danger is there for the assets. Then we have vulnerability analysis. Vulnerability analysis means that you will use the automated tools to scan for the vulnerabilities. Now, automated tools may include NIST, right? It can be Acunetics Web Vulnerability Scanner from Metasploit, also like the organization Rapid7, they also provide Insight VM, right? That's a scanner for the vulnerabilities. So you will do vulnerability analysis, run the vulnerability scanner to find out the vulnerabilities, and then once the vulnerabilities are found, so you will check if they are exploitable or not. Because sometimes vulnerability scanners, they give you the output for the vulnerabilities which are actually not there, right? So you will find out the vulnerabilities if actually the vulnerability can be exploited in this device or not, or in this network or application or not. Once it is done, then post exploitation, after exploitation, what to do, whether to retrieve the data, then find, move from one system to another, do the lateral movement, and then the reporting phase. So whatever things, whatever vulnerabilities you have found, so those vulnerabilities you will be putting in the recording, right? So you will document all those reports, and then you will submit it to the higher officials. That's how you will use it. Now, next topic that we have is essential tools and techniques, right? So the very first tool that we use is Metasploit framework. So Metasploit framework is an open source pen testing tool, and it is owned by the organization Rapid7, right? So it is widely used by security professionals and ethical hackers to identify and exploit vulnerabilities in systems. Now, there are some key features of Metasploit framework. It can be used for exploit development, right? So it contains a vast database of exploits for various vulnerabilities. Then payloads are there. Payloads are what? Payloads provide a way by which attacker system connects to the victim system. Basically, payloads tell that after exploiting the vulnerability, what to do, whether to connect to the machine remotely or whether to connect to it directly, right? So payload is basically a piece of code. After exploiting the vulnerability, the payload code enters the system, executes itself, and finds out what to do next. Then it helps you in post exploitation also. Post exploitation, it allows privilege escalation, persistence, data exfiltration. Then we have automation. So it supports scripting and automation for large scale security assessment. So if you want to run your scripts, you can run your scripts as well. And it works with tools like Nmap, NIST, Burp for comprehensive testing, right? And the command to start the Metasploit framework is always MSF console, right? So if I show you, so this is your Metasploit framework. Now in this framework, you can see there are 2496 exploits. So these are there are 2496 exploit codes that can help you in exploiting different types of vulnerabilities, right? Then auxiliaries are there. Auxiliaries, they help you in finding out more information. So it will be interacting with the target machine for finding out more information. Then posts are there. After you have exploited the vulnerability, what else you can do, right? Then payloads are there, 1610 payloads. After the exploitation, what to do, whether to open a port, how to connect to the target machine. Encoders are there. So encoders, they will help you in encoding the payloads, right? So when you are sending the payload, it is a piece of code which may be detected by the security controls or security measures in between. So what you will do, you will use encoders to encode the payload and then bypass the defenses. Yes. Then we have 13 NOPs. NOPs means no operations. So these are basically kind of padding which is used when you are doing memory based attacks, right? Kind of stack overflow attacks, buffer overflow based attacks. So then NOPs are used to do nothing for a period of time, and it is used to fill the spaces, right? Then we have evasion. Evasion means these are the techniques that you can use to exploit the detections, or basically to bypass the IDS, IPS, or firewalls in between. Right. So that's your Metasploit framework. Right. That's basically how it helps you in finding the vulnerability. Then there is another tool, Nmap. Right. Nmap is a tool which stands for Network Mapper. Now, Network Mapper is a scanning tool. It will scan for the open ports, the services running, the operating systems, right? So that you can strategize next. So if you want to strategize, let's say you want to find out what to do. How can I hack a machine? So the very first thing, you will gather the information, you will find out the IP of that machine. And then once you have found the IP address of that machine, then you will use Nmap to find out open ports. How will you do that and how it looks like? Let me show you. Now, what I will write, I'll write the command nmap -v for verbosity. Verbosity means detailed output I want. -n -pn. -n means I'll give the IP address, but I don't want to find out the domain name of it, right? Or if I have given domain name, I don't want to find out IP of it. So DNS blockage, right? -pn for ping sweep, right? So Nmap does what? By default, Nmap pings all the IP addresses in the whole subnet. So that's what I'm blocking because I don't want too much of traffic. Because if I'm sending too much of traffic, it may detect me, right? So that's why we have -pn, -sv for service version, and -p for scanning all the 65535 ports. So it scans from port number 1 to port number 65535, but it does not scan port number 0 because that is a reserved port. And then 192.168.10.136. Now, as you can see, it discovered many open ports. Now, let's wait for it to scan all the services and let us know what services were running. What is the name of the service basically? So it is still scanning for those 30 services, that what is the name of those services which are running. It found that 30 ports are open and it has given the port numbers as well. But still, I want to find out what services are running. So that's why we are waiting for it. Okay, so if you see, it has given us the output. Now in the output, it is giving you the port number, state is open, service FTP, and version of FTP which is running is VSFTPD. So this is the service version it is giving me. I'll tell you how to take advantage of it, right? But that's how you can find out the service version also, right? So that's your Nmap. That's how Nmap helps. Then we have Burpsuit also. Burpsuit is basically a tool which is used as a proxy. So proxy means whenever you are working with the web applications, right? So where you open the web application in your browser. Now from your browser, the request goes to, let's say you open InfosecTrain, so request went to the InfosecTrain server, right? That's how it happens. You click on courses, it will open the courses. So the request goes to the InfosecTrain server and then comes back. Now what happens if you have installed Burpsuit? So Burpsuit acts as a proxy. That means it is sitting between your browser and the InfosecTrain server. So here you can intercept the request, whatever request your browser is sending to the server, you can stop and see that request in the Burpsuit, right? Now, if I show you how to use Burpsuit. So the command for starting Burpsuit is Burpsuit, and the community edition is by default installed inside your Kali Linux whenever you install it. It will take some time to load up. I accept. So this is Burp suite. Now when you check Burp suite runs on loopback IP. That means 127.0.0.1 and it runs on port number 8080. Yes. Now what if I open my browser? In my browser, let's say I'm opening InfosecTrain. Now what I will do, I will redirect the traffic of my browser to Burp suite. So the burps, I will use manual proxy configuration. Burp suite is running on 127.0.0.1 and port number 8080. So now if I want to capture the request, I'll put intercept on. If I refresh this page, so you can see a request here for the page of InfosecTrain is generated and it is sent from the browser, but it is captured in the Burp suite. It is not sent to the server, then the server of InfosecTrain yet, right? It is stuck here, right? If I want to send the request, there is a button forward, so you can click on forward and the request will be forwarded, and then you can put intercept off, right? So basically burp suite is used to intercept the request and modify the request, like parameter tampering or injecting malicious scripts, right? So that we can find out vulnerabilities and find out the desired data out of the web application. Yes, so that's burp suite. Now if you want to capture the network traffic or browser traffic, there is another way, and that way is, just a second, Wireshark. Now Wireshark is what? Wireshark is basically a packet analyzer. Packet analyzer means whatever traffic, whatever packets are traveling in the network, right? In the network in which you are sitting in, all those packets will be captured, right? So let's say if I'm doing an Nmap scan, that Nmap hyphen p hyphen and hyphen pn hyphen p 21, right? And 192.168.10.136. So if I'm sending a ping, like I'm doing an Nmap scan on port number 21 of the target machine, right? So here you will see send, act, reset. So scan is happening, right? TCP packets are being sent, right? This is what your Wireshark can do. It will capture all the communications that are happening in the network, right? Then we have vulnerabilities. Now, when we talk about exploiting the vulnerabilities, we have different types of vulnerabilities, right? So, like for web application, we have SQL injection, right? So, when we talk about SQL, SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it is used to maintain the database. right? Communicate with the database, add the data, delete the data, retrieve the data from the database. So we communicate with the database through SQL. Now, whenever there is a SQL query going, so in any part of the web application which is communicating with the database, retrieving the data from the database, and it is using SQL to send the data or retrieve the data from the database, we can perform SQL injection. Now the easiest way of exploiting of the SQL injection is, so let's say there is an input field like username field or password field, so you can enter the username or password there, right? So the developer has written the code. Developers, they write the code like this: input type equals to, let's say in double quotes I have written text, right? And close the double quotes. So what I can do is I can write single quote or single quote 1 equals to single quote 1, right? Now this is what, this is a universally true condition, 1 or 1 equals to 1. So one out of both of these conditions, one of the conditions should be true, and 1 equals to 1, one condition is true, right? So that's why it is a universally true condition, and this is called query string. Now, query string is used to test for the SQL injection vulnerability. So, if you are injecting this query string and it works, right? Because this is true, and if there is no validation, data validation, if there is no data validation in the field in wherever you are injecting, so this is a true query. Anything true that goes to the server will reply back true for it, right? So if I inject this, it may reply back true. How it looks like, let me show you. Now this is a username and password field, a login field, right? So in username and passwords, I'm writing single quote or single quote 1 single quote equals to single quote 1. And the same thing as the password. If I click on login, I'm logged in. So this time, what is happening? It is not checking whether the username or password is correct or not. It's checking whether it is true or not, right? So the condition which I have given, that is a true condition. When it went to the server, it was true. So it logged me in and logged me as the user John Smith, right? This is how you do SQL injection. You test for SQL injection vulnerabilities. Then we have vulnerabilities related to next vulnerabilities as XSS. Now XSS stands for cross site scripting. Now cross site scripting is basically a vulnerability which exploits the interactions which are having between the user and the application, right? Whatever interactions are happening between the user and the application, cross-site scripting exploits that. So what attacker does, attacker injects a malicious script to the vulnerable web page. Vulnerable web page sends the script to the database, so it saves the malicious script into the database, right? A victim, a normal user, requests data from the server, right? Now, the data containing the malicious script is loaded to the server given to the user. So, malicious script may get executed and call back to the attacker, right? Now, the easiest way to find out, first thing, here we are not attacking like in SQL injection. What we do, we attack the database. Yes. So the database that we are attacking, that database is basically we are trying to get the data out of the database, Yes. But here, what we are doing, we are affecting or attacking the users of the web application, right? Any user who is trying to interact with the web application will be affected, right? Now, the best way is to, for finding out the SQL injection, the cross-site scripting vulnerability is to write a script. So I will write script. This is how we start the JavaScript, right? So I've written script, then what do we say? Anything. Let's say we are creating an alert box. So script alert one and close the script tag, right? If this script gets executed in your system, right, in your device, then in your web application is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, right? So if I go back to the same application and if I write script alert, so it says congratulations, you are hacked. So in the alert box I have written congratulations, you are hacked. It is executing the script and then it is showing you the alert box. So that means this search field in the web application is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. Yes, perfect. Next thing that we have is the case study. Now the case study is about SolarWinds. Have you guys heard about SolarWinds hack? So there are two organizations. One is SolarWinds, right? Another one is FireEye, right? So there was an these are the two organizations and they have a common platform which is Orion, right? So what attackers did, they infiltrated SolarWinds Orion software development environment, injected malicious code into the software updates. Now the compromise updates, they were distributed to 18,000 organizations, including US government agencies, Microsoft, Cisco, cybersecurity firms. The malware was known as Sunburst. It created a backdoor that allowed the attackers to remotely access the infected systems, right? Attackers remained undetected for months, collecting sensitive data from justice, state, treasury, energy, and commerce departments. The breach was first detected by FireEye cybersecurity firm, which noticed unusual activity in its systems. So Microsoft and other security experts later confirmed the attack's scale, right? So that was the attack which happened. Now, what are the lessons learned from it? First thing, supply chain vulnerability can impact thousands. Advanced persistent threats can remain undetected for months. Need for zero trust architecture and behavior based detection. Then, defense in depth is essential. Organizations, they must implement multiple layers of security controls to prevent and detect sophisticated cyber threats, right? Then multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication alone is not enough. Multi-factor authentication is important. It should be combined with other security measures like endpoint detection and response, right? Then you have to perform SAST, static application security testing, right? So regular security testing of software applications, it can identify vulnerabilities before they are exploited, right? Then the incident response process. Incident response organizations should have a well documented and tested incident response plans to quickly mitigate cyber threats, right? And the same tools, security information and event management. Same tools, they solutions, they need hardening, right? They should be properly configured to detect and respond to sophisticated attacks, right? So SolarWinds attack was a wake-up call for cybersecurity professionals worldwide, strengthening supply chain security, adopting zero trust principles, and improving threat detection. So they are now the top priorities for the organizations who are looking for preventing similar types of breaches. Now, next thing that we have is red team and blue team, right? Red team strategies and blue team. So red team basically does what? They perform a simulated realistic cyber attack with the goal of actual data breach, right? So they avoid the detection. They try to stay stealthy. Stealthy means they try to hide themselves, not to get detected by the blue team, right? Staging and weaponization, right? The weapons they create, they are very they're better as compared to the pen testing people, right? So red teaming is that. Then lateral movement, they move from one system to other system undetected. They capture the data and exfiltrate the data. Then they build the documentation that what steps they have taken so that the or vulnerabilities they have exploited, the ways through which they have entered the system, they can be patched, right? Blue team, it improves the awareness, right? It validates the controls, it tests the response, then validate the detection if the detect the security measures which we have implemented, if they are detecting properly. It improves the processes, right? That's what red team and blue team does. Next thing that we have is, I told you that I'll show you how to exploit vulnerability through Metasploit framework, right? So what we did a scan. Yes. Now the scan said this one. Port number 21 is open, FTP is running, and the version of FTP that is running is VSFTPD 2.3.4. This is the version of FTP which is running. So what I did, I went to the Metasploit framework, right? In the Metasploit framework, I found that if I search for the version VSFTPD 2.3.4, so it is giving me a code, exploit code, right? For the exploitation of the vulnerability. So maybe this will work. So what I will do, I will pick up this exploit code. So for picking up the exploit code, you will write use and the index number. So index number is 0. So I have written 0, right? Then I will write show options, that what things for whom you want to run this exploit for. Obviously for the target, right? So for the target, you have to set something called rhost. Rhost means remote host. right? That is the IP of the target machine. So I will write set our host as 192.168.10.136. I have given the IP of the target machine, and then if I write exploit, let's see what happens. Now if you see, it says command shell session 1 opened, right? If I write slash bin slash bash space hyphen I, so you can see that I'm inside the target machine as a user. What user? If you write who am I? Root user. So I have exploited a vulnerability, basically a backdoor inside the target system, which is using Metasploit framework, right? So that's how you can exploit a vulnerability using Metasploit framework. And that was the last thing for today.